Greetings and salutations, and welcome to episode 161 here of Ref the District. I'm Nathan Perry. That's the Stoner. That's Trev here on the Believe Network. And we've got quite a lot to talk about. And so we hope that we're getting the crowds that we have been for the last few weeks. We know it's kind of the dead spot of the situation, right? Like it's pre-combine. Post-combine, I know people are going to be really excited and they're going to want to talk about a lot of things, but hopefully they want to join in on some of the pre-combine talk. That's what's going to take over the game. I moved that to there, and maybe we should have talked about Sam Howell, which we're going to be doing here in the warm-up, and the fact that people still want to start him. And this isn't just like one or two people. There's a large contingent of fans who would like to see Sam Howell start. So we're going to have that debate in the warm-up. The combine is the game. And then I have some top 100 data in the cool down. I will let everybody know it's not 100% finished. There's so much more that we can learn from the data that I gathered, but I have compiled it all. And it is a lot. Stoner took a look at it and he just had to take a step back because he was just like, wow, that's a lot of data. Absolutely. So we'll take a look at that. But we do appreciate everybody joining us here on Ref the District, episode 161. Yam was in very early. JG here as well. Locked on Law, Brian, Dominique, Patrick in the house, P-Dub there. All right, let's get this over with here with the Sam Howell thing. All right. I'm just going to let you all know the odds of Sam Howell starting are super low. And you can, in fact, bet on them yourself if you want to on Bet Online. Okay. And I guarantee you, if you hit on that, congrats. But I just don't see it happening. But Bet Online will have all that information for you, all the wagering news. If it's not Sam Howell, you could bet on NBA action, March Madness around the corner, all that right at your fingertips. Use the code BELIEVE, BLEAV. Get yourself a 50% welcome bonus. And that will at least make your day better. If Sam Howell starting will not. So that is all good. Believe is your code for Bet Online where the game starts. Let's get this going. Okay. Originally, Stoner and I were going to sit here and we're going to debate this. Trev, we were going to try to convince you one way or the other that Sam Howell should or should not start. Where do you sit on this one, Trev?
He should be the backup. Sorry. Plain and simple. I mean, he should be the backup. We had a whole season of him being QB1 since the start of like training camp and preseason. He was named QB1, and we had one of the most respected and well-known offensive minds in his ear every day since training camp, in the name of Eric Bieniemy. Yes, our offense did not succeed, and it probably falls on Eric Bieniemy. But he just got done doing the same offense at Kansas City with the quarterback, and he executed it. Sam Howell did not execute it. Yeah, people might say, well, he led the league in passing yards for like 12 weeks straight. We're 4-13 with that leading the league in passing yards for 12 weeks straight. Like, that's not an accolade to be – that's good for him personally. Congrats. But it doesn't get the job done. And we don't need to see anything else. We saw a glimpse when he came in the Cowboys game, the last game 2 years ago. That we saw the whole kit and caboodle this past season. And we saw it was a roller coaster. It was up, it was down, and then it was just down.
And it was down. Up, Trev. It was up.
It was.
Stoner has a video out there saying that Sam Howell is him. And I mean, he had us all convinced. Could you remember those throws early on in the season? They were fantastic. And he was moving in the pocket and he was doing some great things. The team still wasn't winning, but you can tell that there was something to build on. And Stoner, you said it, right? He was him. And there was this vibe that he was going to be the QB of the future. And that's why people are saying, hey, give him a better offensive line. He has experience under the Cliff Kingsbury type of offense. Let him go another year with better weapons, better tools. Why is that not the answer, Stoner?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a regretful video. That's on my top 3 list of regretful videos, and it's not 2 or 3. That was, I got a little ahead of myself because I was the guy from the very beginning that didn't even want to see him drafted, let alone wanted to see him play and be the number one quarterback. I was very, very anti Sam Howell. But there were parts of his game when he came out and early on in the season that you could see all of the qualities that people had sort of talked about or had fallen in love with. He has the physical attributes. There's no doubt about that.
Great arm.
He's got a fantastic arm. He has been playing football for a long time. He's a coach's son. He played 3 years, started 3 years in college. He can make all the throws that is required of a professional quarterback. He's tough. He's got decent size. It would be nice if he's a little bit taller. But the part that has eluded him in the second half of the season is just his ability to be able to understand the defense that's coming at him, understand what his offense can do to beat that defense, to just sort of see the field and understand what's going to happen and to be able to make the proper reads and the proper throws. And he couldn't do that. The defense is adjusted, and he was unable to process that. Not one game, not 2 games, but about 7 or 8 consecutive games when they kept getting the chances. And that's how you know that it's not going to be something that he's going to be able to improve. You can't improve that, really. I mean, you can improve it, but you have to show something over the course of a certain amount of time. He couldn't do it.
Well, and with that, Stoner, like, people are trying to say that, hey, you got to give him time to develop. Let him sit there, let him learn. And you do see that with some picks. And Dork Gunner here is asking about that. Whatever happened to drafting and developing players? Like, why can't he just sit? Why can't he not even just sit at this point? He's got to start, right? He's got to play to learn. He's got to trial by fire at this point. Why can't Washington try to develop him, Trev, because he has shown those traits? And when we were talking about the sacks being a problem, though, he fixed that, right? He was on pace for 100+ sacks.
Sort of.
And then,
I will push back, but go ahead.
He fixed it in the sense that he stopped being sacked so much.
Well, because he stopped getting blitzed so much, because teams figured out that they don't need to blitz him because he can't read our defense. Let's sit back in a zone and let him try to figure out what we're doing. Let's stop blitzing him because he can't beat our defense. Continue. Sorry, just wanted a point of contention there.
Trev, why can't Washington, and this is one of the bigger things that people have talked about when it comes about the develop part, why can't they allow him another year here in Washington, build up this roster, because this roster has holes. People didn't want to admit it at the beginning of the season, but and us included, we saw some holes. We saw some C areas, right? Yeah. But we're like, this team can still win football games. Maybe not a lot, which they didn't, but they can win football games. Why can't Washington use that second pick, use those picks within the top 100, developing this roster to become better, allow Sam Howell some more time to develop, see if he can learn from his mistakes from the previous year, and then just, go ahead and try to draft a QB next season if Sam Howell can't fix it? Why is that not a good option for the Washington Commanders?
A few reasons. One, he does not fit the new era's motto, vision, so to speak. Win now, championship team, build the championship team. He doesn't fit that. And that's because of his whole play last season. Another reason is because Sam Howell's not their guy. If they wanted to build around him, then why? Like, there should be no talk about a quarterback at all. But you've heard Robert Very even said it last year, quarterback. Like, this organization, no matter who runs it or whatever, knows that you need to get a quarterback. You got Sam Howell in the 5th round 2 years ago. You developed him all season behind Taylor Heineke all season, okay? So where Taylor was like, give the kid a shot. He proved to the coaching staff last year that he could do it. Then he had an entire season with same said coaching staff to do it. Didn't work. Who's to say we go out and get Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 2 and then get some O-linemen and then get some linebackers? If Sam Howell can't execute or understand Cliff Kingsbury's offense, all those picks are wasted. And we've gone through that year after year after year, and it's time to switch it up. We're not retreading that much when it comes to the quarterback. Like, you've had your shot. Appreciate you, Sam Howell. You've proved that you can be an NFL quarterback at your age and when you're drafting everything, but you just can't start here. Maybe you can start somewhere else, but you're a very good backup. I would have zero problems if we got a guy and something happened where you have to come in and finish the season. I'd be okay with that because you've shown us you can win games, you can make it happen, but also you've shown that you can't make it happen. But it's just time to move on.
I would be okay with him as a backup, but my sort of question is, would Sam Howell be okay with being a backup? I mean, how many guys?
That's an ego check.
It's an ego check, but these guys don't get their egos checked at 25 years old.
I mean, this kid did come in and become a third string who didn't even get like practice squad snaps.
Okay, but he was
but
he was a fifth rounder, and that's sort of understandable. That's your spot. But then you work yourself up to being the guy, being a quarterback for an entire season, and then they're going to bring somebody in and they're telling you suck. So we have to draft a quarterback. How does he take that?
And to piggyback, even with last season's coaching staff regime, benched him numerous times and put in Jacoby Brissett, and we went down the field and scored a touchdown. Every time Jacoby came in, he scored a touchdown when he had the ball. So that should tell you too, no matter the offense, Sam just can't cut it right now. He needs to take a step back and learn from somebody like, I don't know, a Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels or a vetted quarterback, not Taylor Heineke. You know what I mean? Like he sat behind a backup quarterback last year, so that's that. But if time to move on.
But if he becomes the backup for a number 2 pick, well, his time here is done. Because no matter what happens with that number 2 pick in terms of their success on the field, that number 2 pick is going to get 2-3 years to develop. As somebody was saying, what happened to developing a quarterback? You develop number 2 picks. You don't develop fifth rounders because your investment in them is not there. So if they draft a guy at number 2, Sam Howell's time here in terms of being developed and turning into a starter, they're gone. They're out. He has no chance at that because he only has 2 years left on his contract. We forget that he had he had a 4-year contract. He's already halfway through that.
He's halfway through it.
So he doesn't have 3 years left. He's only got 2 years left. So the chances of them keeping him around to develop him, it's over once they draft a number 2 quarterback. So I think they need to move on from Sam, whether that means trade, cut, or whatever. But also with Sam and people asking why can't they continue to develop him, and guys who get the chance to develop are the Troy Aikmans, the Peyton Mannings, the guys who are terrible their rookie years. And Peyton Manning was through 30 picks his first year, something like that. Right? Aaron Rodgers sat for 2 years. Jordan Love sat for 2 years. All these guys who are developed, they're first round picks. And so they know that the talent is there. With Sam Howell, and again, we've said this ad nauseum here on this show in terms of him being a 5th round pick and people saying, well, you can't just say, well, he was a 5th round pick. Well, he was a 5th round pick for a reason. And there are a bunch of reasons why.
Yeah.
And we saw them 17 times.
They have no reason to sit there and invest and develop Sam Howell anymore. It's over for Sam Howell in Washington.
Yeah, and even though they said they've got some core pieces to build around, I'm sorry, he's not a core piece. The quarterback is not a core piece.
Well, a quarterback is, but this particular quarterback is not. Grimjaw coming in late here asking, how is everybody doing? And I think I want to answer that with answering Gus Bus's question as a follow-up here. Honestly, who cares about Sam Howell's development at this point? And the thing is far too many people, I think, care about that development from a fan's point. Because if you're a fan of Sam Howell, I get it. But like Stoner's trying to lay out there, right, and Trev is agreeing with us here, is his time in Washington is done. Unless he sees time due to injury, right? He is not going to continue here in Washington, but we've had multiple posts now on Sam Howell, and people have come out the woodworks.
It's amazing
to talk about how Washington, even if they're not Sam Howell believers, though, right? They just want to keep Sam Howell, build up the rest of the roster, and have Sam Howell do it. Or they want Sam Howell as the QB, and so you build up the roster to support him. And so it's very interesting how many people want to go into this next season with Sam Howell's QB. They talk about Washington's not a quarterback away, so don't waste the number 2 pick on the quarterback. Well, you don't get the number 2 pick all that often. You have Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, who they're, as Locked On Law mentioned earlier, right? They don't want to tie their success and failure to Sam Howell. Not only that, they're actually not tied to Sam Howell in a way that we've seen previous regimes being tied to. Ron Rivera came in and he was tied to Dwayne Haskins. He had to start him. You had Gruden come in and was forced to play with RG3. It wasn't until later that he got to use the guy that he preferred, which was Kirk Cousins, right? And so even if you go all the way back, I think, Stoner, you actually had some data on this. A lot of Washington coaches came in and were straddled with the previous regime's QB decisions.
I mean, 100%, Nathan. I mean, you nailed the 2 in most recent memories. I mean, make no mistake, when Ron Rivera came in, he was hired because he told Dan Snyder that there's $1. He told the owner that he could develop Dwayne Haskins because that's what the owner wanted to hear. That's why he got the job. And maybe there were other coaches who were up for the job, who said, I can't do it because this guy, I've seen it. He's not the guy. And same thing with Jay Gruden. When he got in here, the mandate was RG3 is the guy regardless. And Jay Gruden knew from day one that Kirk Cousins was a better quarterback, but he couldn't do it because the reason he was hired was to develop RG3. And you just keep going back and back with Washington. And it's almost every time there was a young quarterback here that the new coach was kind of ordered to develop. And that's usually not how it works. With Sam Howell, if Sam Howell was a first round pick, that might be an order from the owner. Mm-hmm. It might be you have to develop Sam Howell because we spent a first round pick on Sam Howell. And he's getting $15 million a year as the number 6 overall pick, whatever. And so you can't move on. But he doesn't have that. Dan Quinn does not have that sort of mandate from ownership to where he has to develop.
He ain't got time for that.
Yeah, he ain't got time for that. He's got to find somebody, and he's got to find them quick. And like you said, Nathan, the number 2 overall pick does not just come around. You have to be so bad. So it's hard to be that bad.
Lose 13 games bad.
Some teams tried to be that bad, and they couldn't do it. Right? The Cardinals couldn't do it. The Giants, they couldn't do it. But Washington did. So next year, and who's the quarterback?
9 games in a row lost.
Who's the quarterback we're tanking for next year? Who's that guy? I mean, they're saying that this draft class next year is really bad. You've got 3 potential.
Do you want to be stuck with a Pickens for 2-3 years because you kicked the can down the road? Right? Is that what you want?
To go get a number 2. The number 2 pick has to be a quarterback, and you have to put all of your eggs in that basket, your reputation, all of that. So
Door Gunner with some facts here. We had the number 2 pick a few years ago, so it comes around here often. Yeah, Washington probably a better chance of getting a top 10 pick than most teams from recent memory. And I might have some data on that we'll take a look at within this show here. This is the final note to bring up with this. And again, we're talking about this because we happen to make a couple of Sam Howell posts, and a lot of people came into the defense, or at least the defense of starting Sam Howell for whatever reason. Some people like him. Some people think he is going to be a franchise QB, and some are just saying fill up the roster and then place in your QB after the roster is a winning roster. So JG here is bringing up one of the other things. And then, like I said, the last thing I want to bring up with the Sam Howell debate here, a lot of people, including JG here, are not convinced that Drake May or Jaden Daniels are an actual upgrade to Sam Howell.
I've said this a few months ago on my Twitter. Drake May is Sam Howell 2.0. And the reason why is because when Sam Howell stayed to be a senior, his junior year, he was projected number 1 overall, right? Like he was balling. And then his last year, he was balling, but not as much. He didn't have as much weapons, but he still did okay. And he got drafted 5th round, and he started for an NFL team for 17 games, and that team went 4-13. Yeah, it's not all on him, but he was part of that. Drake May, it's the same talk. Live arm, can maneuver in the pocket, can throw in tight windows. Sam was doing all this in North Carolina and in training camp. But he couldn't get out of ACC. He still went 8-4 in the ACC, and ACC is not a football conference. So he lit up the ACC, but he didn't light up anybody else outside of that. I don't even think they lost their bowl game. And so I think Drake May is literally, and he learned behind Sam Howell. So you know what I mean? Like he's good, but I just see that happening. But Jaden Daniels, 50 touchdowns, a bunch of yards rushing, the elusiveness, the athleticism, the toughness, the grit.
There's a lot to like.
I mean, it's electric. There's a lot to like. I don't see anything electric with Drake May, and you need that in this day's NFL. You need electricity, and somehow, some kind of way, you need to be electric and some like highlight material. You need to. So, no disrespect to Drake May, but I do believe Jaden Daniels would be an upgrade because he's more athletic, he's freakish, strong. But he has all the. I don't know, like if he can read a defense or but like. The stutter sniff test, I think Jaden Daniels is an upgrade over Sam Howell more than Drake May for sure.
I think that's fair when you look at it. And we do some tape studying and all, and this kind of leads into the combine that we're going to talk about and the importance of the combine or whether it's kind of overblown. But the thing is that there are literally, and this is not an exaggeration, there are literally 2,000 people who do this for a living, who study these guys for a living, who believe that both Jaden Daniels and Drake May are massive upgrades over Sam Howell. If they thought Sam Howell was that good, they would have drafted him in the 1st round, regardless of what he did in his last year at North Carolina. Regardless. And again, goes back to there's a reason he was drafted in the 5th round because there are holes in his game, and all of these scouts and all these GMs and all these people in front office saw it. We didn't necessarily see it as people who just look at a little bit of tape, but they saw it. And these same people are looking at the Drake May tape and the Jaden Daniels tape and the Caleb Williams tape, and now even at the JJ McCarthy tape, and they're saying, this guy is a franchise-changing quarterback, or all of these guys are franchise-changing quarterbacks. So that's really all you need to believe. Now they might be busts, and there's actually a better chance of them being a bust than not.
A great chance of being a bust.
Right. I mean, just look just a few years ago when it was 1, 2, 3. It was Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Trey Lance went 1, 2, 3. 2 of those are colossal busts, and one of them we're still kind of thinking, is Trevor Lawrence going to make it to that next level? But everybody's looked at Zach Wilson and said, that's the guy. Everybody looked at Trey Lance, and I mean, San Francisco traded up for Trey Lance. Adam Peters, if you're going to give him credit for all those late round magic, Adam Peters with a colossal bust and moving up to draft Trey Lance. And luckily they fell into Brock Purdy, or else they'd be an 8-9 team, a 9-8 team out there in San Francisco.
Things certainly would have looked different out there.
The point is these 2 guys are graded as top 5 draft picks for a reason, and they're going to get drafted. And yes, they're a massive upgrade over Sam Howell.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and close the book on Sam Howell for now, unless he becomes a big point of topic. Let's move on to the combine. It starts Monday, and it'll be here for the game. Welcome to the game, brought to you by Don't Sleep Energy. You can head over to don'tsleepenergy.com and use the code DISTRICT to get yourself 10% off of the entire order. That's right. So whether or not you're getting drinks, the energy shots, or some of the fantastic gear that they have there at their shop, use the code DISTRICT, get yourself 10% off. It's a local DMV company, great people who work with us, and we're excited to help them out here. And you can help them out and help us out by using that code at don'tsleepenergy.com. The combine is, in fact, starting on Monday. And we'll start to see more and more drills and more of these. And I have someone mentioned JJ McCarthy earlier. I happen to have him up here. I think it was Yam and Stoner. You chimed in on him as well. He's actually the picture for this because this is somebody who I think we've already seen kind of the rise of JJ McCarthy over the last couple of weeks. I think now we're going to start to see more of him as people kind of get away from the narrative that they saw in season. And now we get to see guys work out in shorts and fall completely in love with them for no dang on reason. So it's going to be interesting. And Matt Rao had a question here earlier that we're going to answer before really getting to the combine, because this is a question I think that will be really answered after the combine. Washington and Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, these guys are going to go into and have these interviews with these players. If they interview Caleb Williams or Drake May and Jaden Daniels and they find their guy, we're going to know real quick the answer to Matt Rao's question here, right? Do you think we are talking to Chicago to move up to the number 1 pick? Trev, do you think that's what's happening right now?
I think the only talk about that is what would it take from you guys to make us take the number 1 overall pick and then hang up the phone. And I think they might be talking amongst themselves about it. But as far as talking to the Bears to see what the asking price is, a proposal maybe, I don't think they should, because I do believe the top 3 quarterbacks that are making headlines, and Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels, would all be beneficial to the Washington Commanders organization. Let's get real. I mean, I know I just said Drake May's not electric, but he's more electric than Sam Howell. I mean, he is, bottom line. So I think we should stay pat. We have a lot of good early day 1, day 2 picks that we need to use to build as the vision of Adam Peters and Dan Quinn has been expressed this offseason. Do that. Don't. It's different, I guess, in San Francisco because they were already building their defense. They were already getting known for their defense around that time. They moved up to get Trey Lance. We don't have that here. So we need to use as much draft capital that we have been blessed with and given as much as we can. Because I don't want to spend this whole year thinking, well, dang, we could have had this, could have had that, but at least we got a quarterback. But then here we are at 5-12 or 6-11 because we mortgaged our draft for Caleb Williams. You know what I mean? So that, as far as conversation to the Bears, what's the asking price? Thanks, click. And now they're talking about it in the organization, but I don't want them to move up. Just get your guy at number 2, 1 of the 3, and then build.
They're 100% talking to him, talking to Chicago, at least exploratory talks just to see what it would take. I'm kind of with Trev in terms of whether I want them to talk to Chicago and move up. I mean, my sniff test, and again, we haven't done sort of this in-depth look into these 3 quarterbacks yet, which we will on this channel. Stay tuned for that. And on this show on Wednesdays, we'll definitely get a little bit deeper into them. But my sniff test on Caleb Williams is I think Caleb Williams is like here, and then everybody else is way
there's
down
a
there.
gap. There's a massive
gap between Caleb Williams
and
Jaden Daniels and Drake May or everybody else, if you will. I just think that because I think he's him. I think he's a guy that's going to be a franchise changer. And then when you get to the other 2 guys, I kind of one day I'm looking at things and I'm like, well, I love what Jaden Daniels does. And then the next day I'm looking at, well, I love what Drake May does. But I don't think that this team is in a position to give up so much of what it would take to go to number one, because it will take a lot. Even though it's one spot, it's still going to take
a lot.
Multiple number one picks.
Trade that I've seen so far, because people have thrown out all sorts of ridiculous trades.
Yeah.
Somebody used Washington using their first, the number 2 overall, both second round picks, and I think the conditional third from San Francisco that they got, the 100 pick, and then Jonathan Allen. And they're like, see, it's like trading Montez Sweat and Jonathan Allen to get Caleb Williams. So it's like, one, that's not what's happening.
That's like
two, I would do it in a heartbeat.
That's your draft.
If you trade your second, your 2 seconds, and your third for that number one, that's your draft.
Yeah,
that's basically that's a Mike Ditka kind of deal. But I will say, and I don't want to do that, but I will say that if this team looks at it and says that Caleb Williams is the only guy in this draft that we're willing to go with, and they don't believe in Daniels and they don't believe in May or McCarthy or Nix or Penix and on, then I'm saying you got to do it. It's just like with the RG3 draft. They moved up from 5, I can't remember exactly.
6, I believe.
Yeah, they moved up and they gave up a ton. And they were not in a position that they were a quarterback away. But they looked at RG3 and they said, this guy's a difference maker. This guy right here is a difference maker. And so we were all okay with it because we thought this guy was going to be a franchise changer. And so if those people that are 100 times smarter than us decide that they want to give up basically their entire draft and go get Caleb Williams at number 1, I would be all for it. I'd look at it with a little side eye, but I would be all for it.
It's going to be interesting. And like I said, I think a lot of these answers are going to come here within the next week or two. We're going to see it from teams. Teams are going to start to kind of solidify their board because now they have the tape. Now they're going to get some answers with some of the athleticism questions that they might have. You're like, hey, this guy looked a little slow on tape. Does he measure out faster than that? And was it something else? Or nope, he measures the way that he played. Or maybe this guy looked a little slow and he measures out better. So maybe there's something, a scheme or a decision-making thing. And then it's causing that thing to be, that mental capacity to be slow, right? So then there's the interviews, and that's where I think that they get their bang for the buck. The teams do. We don't get to see that, right? We don't get to see how Sam Howell breaks down tape and whether or not that's enough to wow people and be like, okay, this guy gets it. We don't get to see them sitting with JJ McCarthy and see if that's actually going to happen, if he's going to jump up the board. Or if this is a question between Drake May and Caleb Williams, which we've seen a lot more of, is, hey, there's people out there who think Drake May is the number 1. Stoner brought up in a previous Ref the District video that there are some people who've come out and said that Drake May is the 3rd best prospect in like the last 3 years. So this is where those interviews are really going to start setting people apart. And that's where I think Adam Peters and company are going to get their information that they need. Chicago will as well. Chicago, if they've got to trade Justin Fields sooner than later. I think they're holding on to him for as long as they can to try to get people to move up, because nobody's moving up to the number 1 pick if Justin Fields is gone, because Chicago is planning on taking a QB. And the cost is going to be astronomical to move them off because they get to pick the QB that they want at number 1, regardless of who it is. If it's Caleb Williams, if it's Drake May, Jaden Daniels, regardless, they get to take it. So they're holding on to Justin Fields to give people this will they, won't they, to try to see if they can up the cost, because once Justin Fields is moved, no one's going to offer you enough to move off that spot. I don't think Adam Peters is going to do it. I just don't see.
I don't think so.
As much as I love Caleb Williams and have since he came out and started or even came in relief for my Oklahoma Sooners, it's just not there for him, which is crazy, because if this guy, if Williams ends up being a quarter of Patrick Mahomes, there's no cost too great to do it.
That's right. That's right. That's kind of what I was saying. If they believe that he is that kind of a guy, then I would be okay with them trading whatever it takes to go get him. I don't think he's that far. You know, I don't think he is that 25% of Patrick Mahomes, but I think he is a franchise changing type quarterback.
Yeah,
I think he can be
so
a
good.
Josh Allen. He's not as big as Josh Allen, but I think he can be that type of guy who can just absolutely control a game. So, yeah, I would be okay with it. But I also wanted to ask about, this was the very first question, even before we came on, from Lockdown. And he said, I guess it's not a question, so I'll turn it into a question. There's nothing the combine can tell you that 4 years of game film cannot tell you, except talking to the prospect. That can tell you a lot. Do you guys believe that that's kind of the case with the combine, that all this other stuff that they do, all the measurements, all the speed, all they're getting their RAS scores and their written tests and all that other stuff? Do you think all of that is nonsense compared to the film?
No, not total nonsense. I guess it's another way to make sure they're still in shape. If they're NFL shape, I think that's what these tests are for too. That's a really good question, though.
There's a lot of good examples of guys who have done kind of bad in certain tests at the combine, who've turned into excellent players,
MVPs,
or guys who can't even lift what do they do? 225.
225. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many times? How many reps?
They can do them like 3 times, or some guys can't even do them at all. Like I think Devontae Smith couldn't do any of them or whatever, but he doesn't need to. But still, it's something that you see that he has really no sort of core strength, but he's the man. And then there's other guys that come out there and just excel at a lot of stuff and then get overdrafted because of that. So
Zach Wilson.
Yeah, Zach Wilson.
Remember his combine his pro day video, whatever, was circulating.
Everybody saw that throw.
And it worked for him to get drafted that high. But other than that, that's it.
Do you guys remember any sort of combine hero? What do they call them? Combine killers or combine heroes or whatever, that just blow up at the combine, and then when it gets to them being actual on the team, they were terrible. Do you guys remember any guy, they get overdrafted because of the combine?
I don't know names, but I'm sure there's some who've like ran the 40-yard dash incredible.
Yeah.
And they're on practice squads in year 6.
Who's that dude from Washington, the running back? Ross? Was it John Ross?
Oh, John Ross, the receiver from
the receiver. Yeah.
And then
he ran like a 4.2 or something like that.
He ran like
where he had now
ever. And he was like he vaulted all the way to like the 9th pick, and then couldn't even stick. Back in my day, back what I remember, and there it is, Gus. Gus must be the same age. Mike Mamula for the Eagles. He just killed at the combine and rocketed up the draft. I was just wondering if there was other guys like that you can remember.
How about we go in-house and Jamin Davis was somebody who killed it at the combine and probably took himself from a number 2, like a 2nd round pick to the 1st round pick. Now, some of that is Washington maybe reaching for him, but you see that a lot. And I think that for Locked On Law here, who saying like the combine really isn't important in the grand scheme of things. Maybe I'm putting a little bit into that comment that we had shared. But I know some people don't look at the combine and see the value in it, but I guarantee you the players see the value in it, and that the scouts see it, because yes, you have tape, but like I said, Troy Apke, Doug is going after Trev there.
He was a 6th round pick, wasn't he?
But he was fast.
How much that helped him.
The difference, that was probably his combine was probably the difference of him going undrafted to him being a 6th round pick.
Yeah.
And that is what ends up happening with this, because you have hundreds, there's 250 some odd picks in the NFL draft, right? Just under 300 picks in the NFL draft. And to be able to sort them all, you're going to look at tape and you're going to be like, hey, this guy and this guy are pretty close.
Mhm.
Okay. They might even be in different positions, but you might give them similar grades there. And then one has that better combine and it just kind of inches ahead and it could jump, maybe not just one person, but maybe that combine gives them a score in their analytics department just higher. A lot has been made of the RAS scores, the relative athletic scores over the last few years. And it looked like Washington was buying into that as well because you get guys who can be explosive. Hey, that's a term that the new people are using, right? The new staff is using it. Someone, we want to be explosive. Well, you know who's explosive is somebody who has a high RAS score. So you can have someone like a Jamin Davis who was darn near, I think, a 10.0 on that scale.
He was real close. And you know who he was better than? It was not the same draft year, or maybe it was the same draft year. I can't remember exactly. He had a higher RAS score than Micah Parsons. And Micah Parsons, you see what they've done. And that's why a lot of people think that maybe Jamin Davis might excel in this wrong way with this new staff, because they're not going to play him out of position like they did for the most of the time he was here, and that they can move him around, maybe even line up at defensive tackle, right, to be able to take advantage of an offensive lineman or in outside linebacker stuff. So I think that RAS score does play a part into how guys can get drafted a little bit higher, but then they still need to have the coaching and they still need to have somebody
more
there
to it.
to design the defense to fit around them.
Some of it's that smartness, the intelligence, and some of that stuff you can't see on tape, and some of that stuff you can't interview or even do a drill for. So they've tried different QB drills where they've done like flashing lights and have the QB try to like how quickly can they pinpoint these flashing lights out in the distance, and it just maybe isn't as effective because you don't really see it being used anymore. One of the drills I love, probably my favorite drill to kind of watch and kind of keep track of the scores, is the 10 cone splits for linemen. And I think that's a drill that really helps your scouting department kind of decide, because you have maulers up and down D1 schools, up and down even D2 schools. And the difference between some guy who's playing in North Dakota State to some guy playing in Alabama is that 10 cone drill, because you won't need at the NFL level, you can't just be bigger and stronger than the guy next to you. You have to be faster. So you need somebody who can excel at that 10 cone drill. So that's why you'll see, actually, Alex Leatherwood was actually a name that I had seen pop up in my draft research. He's just an Alabama mauler, and you're thinking, great, but if his 10 cone drill wasn't as strong as some of the other guys, he should have been picked later, in my opinion. I like my linemen not just big and strong, but ones that can move, and I'm okay sacrificing some strength for a guy. I don't care if the guy lifts 30 225s, right? I care if the guy can do a 10 cone split in X amount of time, because to me, that's needed, right? When you're trying to use speed to beat somebody, your linemen need to have that speed. So that's my favorite drill.
I think there's also, these certain drills can kind of hurt certain guys' draftability or where their numbers might be. And I think specifically back to when DK Metcalf, who was looked at to be a really high pick, but he did terrible in the 3 cone drill. And so they all said, well, then there's a whole bunch of routes that he can't do. All he can do is kind of go, and you go after him. But and then he gets to the NFL and he's a stud receiver. He's a number.
Well, it turns out that, hey, having that one really good skill was probably more important than being able to run a 5-yard out very crisply.
Yeah, absolutely.
DK Metcalf is an example where some the analytics can't always help. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the cool down. But that's the thing, right? And I shared Deluxe here. RAS can also fail. It's a piece of data to add to eval, just like the interview. Absolutely, right? You don't want to look at any one bit of this. That's why you have the full picture. And even then, sometimes the algorithms that these coaching staffs, these scouting departments will put through to kind of help make up their big board, like it's not perfect. There's no perfect system, and you're going in the draft as a crapshoot. And And so it's interesting to see how it kind of goes through, but you're trying to make an intelligent decision. You're trying to stack the deck in your favor, and the combine is absolutely a tool at your disposal. We talked about trading up. How about trading down for Adam Peters? The combine's going to be big for that. And Trev's shaking his head. No, but Trev, if they fall in love with JJ McCarthy and they know they can pick him up at 9, Adam Peters might just be like, hey, go ahead and give me more picks, give me more time, give me more shots at the dartboard. And I'll take JJ McCarthy, who impressed me at 9, and use all these other picks we've got to help build up the roster. It's a possibility they trade back. Trev, why don't you like that as an option?
Because we have the number 2 pick in the draft. But for some reason, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May bomb the combine, okay, maybe. But let's be real here. We're at number 2. We're not going to trade back because we like JJ McCarthy. I'm just being real. I know it's possible, but that's not going to happen. Because if it is, if you feel that great about him, there's there's more quarterback needed teams behind us, the Patriots, the Raiders. What if JJ goes to one of them? Now you missed out on, somebody said we don't have to be desperate anymore. Don't be desperate. Like Stoner says, don't overthink it. We got the number 2 pick. And if we don't like a quarterback, we could use Marvin Harrison. That'd be cool. We could use Joe Alt. That'd be cool. Or Fashanu, however you say it, the other tackle of Penn State. That'd be cool. But we're at number 2. Don't trade back because somebody wows you at the combine. Okay? Don't do it.
It's too risky.
It is too risky.
You think JJ McCarthy is the guy,
then take him at 2.
Take him at 2. Don't risk
Stop the world. Take your guy at 2. Exactly. But
Smart
that ain't
people
gonna happen.
will outsmart
Realistically,
themselves all the time, guys.
I'm with you,
Smart
Trev.
people will absolutely.
I mean, we're at number 2. If we were like number 11, okay, maybe. Number 12, 13, okay. But we're at number 2 with 3 franchise-changing football players. And we like JJ McCarthy because he won a national championship by handing the ball off all the time? Okay, I'm getting too far into. No, I'm just sorry, Nathan. I know it's a possibility and you're doing it because, but realistically.
Mainly because I want to
we
poke
ain't
the
trading
bear.
back.
I knew this was where I could
we
poke
ain't
the
trading
bear.
back.
It was JJ McCarthy
Not for
and trading back.
Michael Penix, cool. JJ
What?
McCarthy, I'm good on JJ McCarthy.
I actually might like JJ McCarthy more than Penix Jr., but that's a debate for another day. I still have to watch the tape. I still have a lot more to watch, but the more and more I'm collecting, the more and more I think that the people who are the JJ McCarthy lovers are going overboard, for the record. But there is enough there, especially the fact that he is so young, but he has the talent. You might be able to get him in. I've seen the stash for a year comment somebody else had made. We don't have that luxury to stash for a year. This isn't Jordan Love's situation where he can sit behind Aaron Rodgers, right? Kansas City can stash JJ McCarthy because they have Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes is still young. So where's another one?
Right.
Maybe St.
New
Louis,
Orleans.
not St. Louis.
You
I
can
would say this.
learn
Los
behind
Angeles
Derek
Rams.
Carr.
Yeah, Derek Carr. Derek Carr needs to be replaced. I think maybe Stafford has a couple more good years in him. So you put him over in the Rams, and then all of a sudden JJ McCarthy takes over 3 years from now. That might be a great situation.
Go to Cincinnati. You're guaranteed to start at some point in the season because Joe Burrow can't stay healthy. So hey.
Yeah, right. I mean, it is kind of interesting now that you say that, Nathan, that when you kind of look at the state of the quarterback, and we went through kind of the golden era of quarterbacks there for a while when you had the Brady and Rodgers and Breeze and Phillip Rivers, and I can go on and on, Roethlisberger, Eli Manning. That was kind of the golden age, and then they were starting to phase out, and we were like, well, who's going to step up? But what we've seen now is that you do have a whole bunch of teams that either have a quarterback and have a quarterback for the next 5 or 6 years, or they don't have a quarterback. There's very few teams that are kind of aging their quarterback out. And I think Stafford might be one, but is there another team that has a franchise quarterback that is probably going to retire in the next 2 or 3 years? Are there any other teams like that? And don't give me like the Derek Carrs of the world, because those guys are not
No,
really,
that's a mediocre one. I kind of wiped that one.
Aaron Rodgers, the Jets. He might
I mean,
play 3 more years.
he's done. He might have a year in him, but I guess Aaron Rodgers might be one where somebody can go and sit for a year behind him. But I mean, there's just not that many. It's either you got your quarterback or you don't. And I guess people are saying the Jets. That's a good one. And Trev said that. But there really isn't anybody else. I'm just trying to think of, I mean, as much as you want to hate on a guy like Dak or whatever, he's going to get a new deal. He's going to be there 5 or 6 more years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because all the quarterbacks that seem like have been there for longer, but they're still young. The Josh Allens, the Pat Mahomes, the Dak Prescotts, the Joe Burrows. Like, they've all been there for years, but they're still not even 30 yet.
Yeah, so
Geno
maybe
Smith is also one of those in that car range that's just not good enough to really be.
Who was it again?
Geno Smith for the Seahawks.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
how about Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, but
he is much older.
You don't even know where he's going. But if it might be Minnesota, but but a guy like Geno Smith, I mean, if you drafted a quarterback in Seattle, I mean, maybe you sit him a year, but you might even start him. Russell Wilson, that's actually a decent one. That's a good one.
Well, he's a free agent too.
Now,
so whoever picks up Russell Wilson or Kirk Cousins can still draft a QB here. That is a developmental
Russell Wilson's a free agent?
He's a free agent. Denver's let him loose.
Oh,
if not, they're going to.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe they're going to.
Didn't
he sign like
He did
4 years?
Yeah, then they benched him at the end of the year about his contract, like and he was like, okay, well, I'm out.
I don't know his situation.
He's out. He's going to Pittsburgh.
A lot of people have gotten him to Pittsburgh.
Also wanted to mention, I'm stealing this from our buddy Ken Johansson, who's at Burgundy Burner on Twitter, and he's very connected when it comes to like the Senior Bowl and all these different pre-draft camps and the combine and all that. And he put out this information just it was this morning, actually. Since the beginning of draft season in early January, the Commanders have met and interviewed. These are 381 players so far. Mm-hmm. They're doing their due diligence, and that includes 20 different quarterbacks. Now, of those 20, we're not talking about the big three, but we are talking about the McCarthys and Nicks and Penix, guys like that. But some things in here that were 43 different receivers, 46 different cornerbacks, 33 different edge rushers. And then it's even interesting that 7 kickers, 7 punters, and 7 different long snappers.
Oh, that's not interesting. That's
keep an eye on that.
Joyce Ly's a free agent. Washington doesn't have a kicker right now.
He's a Ron Rivera guy.
He's a long gym snapper. Guy,
the long snapper that they brought in, I mean, that was just on a 1-year deal. So they need a long snapper, right? They need a long snapper. They need a kicker.
Do not draft another long snapper.
Right.
Please, for the love of God, for my health. I am slowly getting healthy. Please, for love of goodness, do not draft another long snapper. Do not move up in the draft to get a long snapper. By the way, so when we get to the top 100 data, a special teams member almost ruined everything. San Francisco took Moody in the top 100.
And he hasn't been good.
And I had all this in there, how to get the data range and everything going great. And then all of a sudden I had to worry about special team snaps. And I was like, I don't have that data. I need to go get that data. It was a mess. Yeah. Do not draft a special teams player. I don't really, maybe a kicker later is fine. There's been several kickers. There's been several kickers who've been drafted who've been fine, but these guys are all undrafted. But it's good to do your interviews and do not draft a long snapper is all I'm saying. Do not draft it. Okay, now that we're over. Stoner's staring at some information. I gave my favorite drill to kind of watch and everything was the 10 cone. Trev, which is your favorite?
Oh man, I really don't pay attention to mini drills like that during the combine. But if I had to pick one, I'm a big fan of the vertical. I mean, it's basic, but NFL is all about vertical. You got to have a vertical game, especially if you're an offensive skill player, and if you're a linebacker too, like middle and also linemen. They jump up and tip passes. So I like the vertical. It's not flash. It's not exciting. It's probably basic, but I think vertical is very important, especially Mm-hmm.
All right, Stoner, how about you? What's your favorite? And if you're watching this live, go ahead and let us know your favorite drill for the NFL Combine starting next week.
Yeah, mine is pretty simple. I do love speed, so I do like watching guys run the 40, and I like to see guys who are kind of middle of the draft sort of picks go out there and run like a 4.34, and then you get really excited. I love watching that. But when you do kind of look at all the different sort of drills that they do and all the different things that come out of that, I do enjoy looking at RAS scores. I do enjoy looking at how athletic these guys are overall. And it doesn't necessarily equate to being a great player, but it does just kind of show their athleticism. And really that's the best athletes are usually the best players as well. So I like seeing that, but I like watching the 40s. I just like watching speed. So that's
I got another one. The one where the receiver comes out.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You see,
You can't
like
drop any of those, man.
No.
If you
That's
drop
what I'm saying,
one,
so.
I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of like the QB Grimjaw with the 40 and the QB passes. It's the same with the QB passes. You if you are a guy who's not one of the big names, you cannot afford to be off on those passes. Those passes need to be money every single time. Like if your pass is just even slightly wobbly or off, you see everybody's looking, and then everyone does this. For the audio listeners, I turned my head down. I got my little board out and like scribble because the moment that happens, Ushman with the shuttle drill, we had Sharon with the vertical jump and the 3-cone from Eddie, all in the chat here.
Do you all remember how Justin Tucker got into the NFL? The greatest kicker ever. Do you remember how he got into the NFL?
Ever.
He did a YouTube video. He was not drafted. He did a YouTube video of just him booming kicks, accurate. But he didn't get drafted, and the Ravens like, come on in, we'll see what you can do.
And didn't Atlanta's kicker do somersaults while kicking or something on social media, and that's how he got a job?
There was another kicker who did all sorts of like crazy things. I don't know if it was
he got
yeah.
So
you do what you got to do to get all you need is an in, and
I'm gonna
try. There you go. I want to see these recorded. Please record these and send these to Ref the District.
Yo, that would be hilarious.
We need your combine. It's kind of like you're talking about the 40. What is his name who does the 40 for charity?
Rich Eisen.
Rich Eisen, yeah.
Rich Eisen. Rich's 40 is the best 40 to watch. Like all the others are pretty. I love what they do with the 40. I love when they do like the overlay of showing you just how much of a difference these are. Remember they had Baker Mayfield up there with like a whole bunch of others, and it was like, are we really drafting this guy at number 1? Yes, we're really drafting this guy at number 1. And then you have Rich up there who does his, and they're in a suit.
I might do a 40 this year.
Okay, we'll all have to do one. I can't.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I actually am supposed to be, from my back surgery, I'm not supposed to be doing anything crazy like that, but maybe afterwards.
It's supposed to be nice next week, right? Well, at least around here. Sorry, you guys are all in different spots. But
it was nearly 80 degrees here, by the way, and sunny. So and
are you serious right now?
Yeah. Oklahoma weather. I'm not sure where winter was.
Yeah. I'm gonna do it. I think it's gonna be close to 70 around here next week. So I'm gonna do a 40, and I'm gonna do a 2-camera 40. I'm gonna do a camera at the start and a camera at the end, and with a stopwatch. I'm in. Who's in with me? Who can beat my? Well, I like to take bets on what you guys think I could run it in. What do you guys think right now that I could run a 40 in?
A stoner 40.
A stoner 40.
I don't
training.
know.
I won't train at all. Like,
Yeah. Are we
I would
sure you're
train
going to
over 2
complete
days.
it? How many people
I
want to
say
take the
7 seconds.
7 seconds? 7 seconds? You have NFL athletes, Stoner, or not Stoner, but Trev, that 7 seconds would be fairly impressive for offensive linemen.
Gus said
Gus with
7.3.
Matt saying time it with the sundial. 12.8 for Matt, 6.2. Tommy T showing some serious love there. I might be with Matt here. I think we're north of 10 seconds.
I want to do one too.
North of 10?
North of 10.
I thought 7 was a little bit of an insult. And you're going north of 10?
Stoner, like I've seen you in your walking shoes, okay?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna shuffle along. Like I have serious questions without training, Stoner. Are we sure you're gonna complete the 40-yard dash?
Is this in the is this in the morning or in the evening, afternoon? Like, what are we talking?
All right, it's going to be
Inside,
in the
outside, outside.
Outside, outdoor. Well, where am I going to do it indoors? Oh, like at a gym.
I mean, the combine's indoors, so I'm just.
Yeah. I'm going to do it outdoors. I got a empty lot, like 2 houses away here. I'm going to measure it out, 40 yards, and I'm guaranteeing under 10. So what's the wagers?
Gus sitting here saying definitely need to see a doctor's note before we allow Stoner to do it. Stoner is the old man of the group. He is 52.
In 2 weeks, 2 weeks from today, actually, exactly 2 weeks from today, I will be double nickel. The big
Nice.
5'5".
It'd be 10.
55.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
all right. Well, then I'm gonna
I'm
change my guess to.
And
How
you
old do
know
you think
what?
Rich Eisen is? How old do you think Rich Eisen
Yeah.
is?
What's Rich Eisen's fastest?
Okay,
40?
but I'll tell you
Yeah.
this, and I also will say this: I won't do any sort of, warm up type, sprints. I won't say like I'm going to try it two or 3 times. It's just going to be a one time. I'll warm up, kind of, stretch out, maybe jog a little bit, but I won't do any practice 40s. 140, one time.
I want to do it too.
All right. I'm gonna TJ giving you 7.5. And
There we go. That's what I'm talking about.
And I have to say I've been mean to Stoner. I'll go.
I'm going under 10.
I'll go 8-2 is my final answer for this one.
And by the way, that's a good question. I could do it on the road, or should I do it in the grass? I'm gonna have to do it on the
for
road.
your safety. This is for your personal safety.
Yeah, I would do it. I would do it on the road.
Yeah. I think
JG, hope you get a strong tailwind. Yeah, Hurley, we're getting video of this. We'll definitely.
Yeah.
This will be a Ref the District short. This is gonna be. We're gonna have all sorts of. This is gonna be content everywhere. Hurley going with grass, and I don't think so. Yam, I actually have it up here. He actually got down to a 5.98 in 2020. He does that in a suit. He has changed his shoes though. He after his first one, I think he did run a 6.77, but he did that in like tennis shoes in the suit and tie, or like dress shoes in a suit and tie. JG, grass hurts less if you fall.
That's what I said. Don't trip and fall, dog.
Man.
Yeah, I'm with HG though. Grass might have those bumps and holes, although he's up in Dundalk, north of Baltimore, and that might not be the best roads either. So
I want to do it too, Stoner. For real, I really want to do this.
Just everyone's clowning Stoner, and I love it. We've totally gotten away from combine talk, but Matt saying here,
combine talk.
Which would be easier for the ambulance, road or grass?
That's a good one. That's a good one. All right. I'm gonna prove all the haters wrong.
All right, I've got you at 8-2. I've got you at 8-2.
Nathan 8-2.
7-9.
Ooh, just a little bit.
I don't know if am I gonna have a stopwatch that's gonna be that detailed or whatever. I guess.
I mean, you're recording video. You can even just use the video time. So.
Yeah. Okay. I'll figure something out. I'll figure something out. Yeah, but I'll definitely get video on it.
That's actually a good point from Yam. You could try to go to a local track and do it there.
Ooh, I got a local track right down the road, less than a mile from
I
here.
do too. I could go to VMI track.
Ooh, I'm doing it at the track.
I'll do it at the track too.
Yeah.
All right, Trev, we need video just like that.
Yo,
you and Pace set it
okay.
up. All right. You go from starting point to finish point. We need those two. I'll do a walk.
I just
I'll
confirmed with my
solidarity.
EP
Yeah, in solidarity, I'll do one that's walking.
Oh, okay.
I can't run because of the back. So in solidarity, I'll do one that is walking.
That's awesome. Run with Ref the District.
Run with Ref the yes. Screw the other guy. Don't run with Rich. Run with Ref the District. All right. Anything else here with the combine talk before we get into the really, really nerdy stuff with my details?
The title is who should the Commanders focus on at the combine? We haven't even answered that yet.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. We totally got off track and I completely forgot that.
I don't have any names, but I'll go positions. Clearly quarterback, that's a given. Linebacker, cornerback, offensive lineman. I think because the way free agency is, I don't know what more positions for free agency, but I feel like defensive line we could address free agency. Offensive line we could address free agency a little bit, but as far as building, offensive line, linebacker, and defensive back. Because a lot of veteran defensive backs are getting older. They might have a good year. 1 year you get them, they're bad, aka William Jackson. So I'd rather just get somebody raw, like a Joey Porter Jr. or Christian Gonzalez or Emmanuel, something like that again. Focus on that where we're lacking a lot of holes. I don't have any names.
How about you, Stoner? Who do you want them to focus in on?
Sorry, I did that cough without muting myself. I usually am pretty good about that. Yeah, I mean, it totally does depend on what they do in free agency. Think about what costs the most in free agency with guys. What's going to cost a lot? Edge rushers are going to cost a lot. We're not even going to talk about quarterback, but offensive tackles are going to cost a lot in free agency. So those are the kind of guys you kind of want to focus on when you get to the draft. But it is all going to come down to they could have a complete draft plan right now of what they want to do. And then when free agency comes along, it could flip the script on what they're going to do. Because they might end up in free agency saying, you know what, we can get Brian Burns for a good price as an edge rusher. So now we don't necessarily need to draft an edge rusher very high. Or we can go get a Tyron Smith on a nice 2-year deal that's team friendly with low cap hits, and we can plug him in at left tackle, and therefore we don't necessarily have to get a left tackle high in the draft. So it really does come down to what they do in free agency. But usually you're going to focus on those positions that are going to cost a lot in free agency. So probably edge and lots of linebacker, and linebacker.
Linebacker is important. They probably need to fill that position, but I will say in the top 100, I really don't want to see them taking a linebacker. No, I do think, and like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about some of this in the top 100 data of where some of those hits and misses are for that perspective. Stoner, you're right. They have to look at everybody because free agency is going to change things. Personally, though, I'm interested in how the conversations are going to go with the edge rushers and how they're going to go with the wide receivers, because those are two positions I think Washington can use improvements at. And those are two that you don't want to miss in the draft. You need an edge rusher. Like, you should be paying for more edge rushers in free agency, but you should probably draft one as well. So you don't want to miss on them if you're going to be spending one of those top 100 picks. Okay. And then wide receiver, we have Terry McLaurin, we have Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel's a free agent. So then you have De'Ami Brown, who didn't make the jump that we expected him to make in year 3. And you have a bunch of Mr. Sillier Gold. Yeah, that guy's not making it on the roster. I'll put $1 on that right now.
Yeah, safe dollar.
Dax Milne.
Yeah, and then, so Dax Milne's not making the roster. You've got a couple other guys who are question marks, right? Even though people love Tinsley, he might still be like the 5th or 6th receiver. So you want to get somebody, I think, in this draft, and you want to be able to hit on them. So those are where I kind of want them to focus. I'm not saying you have to take them in the top 100, but I'm saying that if you take them, you're going to want them to be hits.
I agree.
That is where I want them to focus. Again, no names. They need to work on the linemen, and I think that they're going to get that right. And that is absolutely where I think they should be spending some of these top 100 picks. And I'll talk about exactly why when we get to the cool down. A lot has been made about Washington having all these picks within the top 100. Why do you think that is such a big deal that it's the top 100, Trev?
Because that's where all the talent is in the draft. I mean, you find your gems later on, but all your natural born talent, Senior Bowl highlights, draft analysis before pre-draft, that's where all it is. So it's very important. That's where your day one starters are. Your day one depth players come into handy if you've got like veteran positions, but they're a nice depth piece for that. That's where you get your bang for your buck is top 100. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be called top 100. Now there are some misses in top 100. Don't get me wrong.
A lot of misses.
A lot, but it's a lot of projected, natural born athletic talent that can come in and fit you and help your program day one. So that's why it's important.
I mean, they're called gems because they weren't expected to be any good if you're drafted outside of the top 100. So, 100 is where the talent usually lies. That's where I know you did a top 100 sort of stat sheet analysis, but if you compare the top 100 to the rest of the draft, you're going to see a huge difference in terms of how many make it in the top 100 and how many don't outside the top 100. So it's just because that's where all your talent is, and that's where people are putting the most money too.
You guys aren't entirely wrong. I mean, I've talked about the draft being a crapshoot, and it's throwing darts at the dartboard type situation. And the closer you are to that first overall pick, the likelihood that you're actually a better player than somebody drafted behind you is greater, typically speaking, right? Like they're just this way that it goes. The talent is there. But Brian is absolutely also right on this. It's the top 100 because it's just a nice round number, and it encompasses both your first round, your second, and your third round. That's really the reason I want to tell you that, because something I found through this research, and you're going to see it here in just a moment, is that this is like, you can see there's a significant drop off. Like as I was going through the data, once I got to a certain point, I was just like, okay, we're at that point of the draft where the talent drop off was significant. And all of a sudden the numbers got worse and worse and worse. And then maybe there was a gym and things got a little bit better, but that's just typically speaking, it's the top 100 because of that reason there. So I actually sent this message to Stoner as I was going through the data today, and there's nothing more about it being a crapshoot, this draft being a crapshoot, than picks 93 and 94 in the 2001 draft. That was Spencer Brown and Ben Cleveland. These are both offensive linemen. Okay, taken just one pick apart here. One is a solid starter for the Buffalo Bills. The other one barely sees the field. And that's Ben Cleveland. And so it's just interesting because it's just like, you don't know, you're taking a chance on a guy being an NFL starter for you. And Stoner's talked about how a second and third round pick should be impact players, right? Well, first round picks, of course, like that should be a day one starter. But Washington has not been very good, as Locked on Law here is talking about blue chips. All top 100 explains why we have none. And you're right, the draft, and I'm just going to go ahead and share the data here. We'll remove the branding for a little bit and pop this up here. This is the spreadsheet, and I failed to make it public before So I apologize for those who might not be able to easily see this. I will make it public afterwards because it does take me a little bit of doing here. Plus, there's more I want to do. There's just so much data here. This is every pick in the top 100 from 2020 to 2023. So 4 years worth of drafting and all of the data. Not only that, but it is also the amount of snaps that they did compared to their team. So the numbers you're seeing there that are codified and colored are the greens are the ones who played close to 100% of the primary snaps is what I have called them, versus the zero is they played none, which there was a couple of those who did not play a single snap for whatever reason. They didn't play a single snap of primary snaps. And when I say primary snaps, what I'm talking about here is these are, for the most part, thanks San Francisco with Moody, offensive people or defensive people. I did not count their special team snaps. You're not drafting somebody in the top 100 to be your special teams guy. You're just not, unless you're San Francisco with Jake Moody, you're just not doing that, right? You're doing it because these guys are supposed to be some starters for what you got. And so this is all of them currently sorted as the pick. Let me just bring up just Washington's real quick to make a point here. Let's see if I can clear this. There we go. Here's Washington's within the top 100. I did that wrong. So let me pick Washington and hit OK this time. All right. Not very good, folks. Not very good.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And the question I
God.
asked Nathan when he said he was finished with this, and I was, there's a couple of them, but one of them is, or Nathan told me, he said, it's a little bit, it's not a cut and dry sort of deal to where a guy, offensive linemen play more snaps than, for example, defensive tackles. So you can't just say, well, this guy didn't play as many snaps. Well, he's a defensive tackle, so he doesn't play that many snaps as an offensive lineman would. But my question, Trev, that I wanted to ask you from the very beginning on this is it still bothers me to this day, and I don't understand it. Why is it considered normal, if you will? Why is it that an offensive lineman plays 100% of the snaps and a defensive lineman does not? I don't understand it. Why does a cornerback play 100% of the defensive snaps, assuming there's, no injury or whatever? And why does a wide receiver not play 100% of the snaps? Unless there's like small, like defense or offensive packages. Maybe it's a fourth and inches and they don't need the wide receiver because they got extra linemen. That's different. Right. But like Terry McLaurin will play 75% of the snaps. But a corner will play 100% of the snaps. I don't understand it because that corner is out there on every play that Terry McLaurin is in there. And he's also in there when Terry McLaurin's replacement's in there.
Yeah.
And then it can't be an offensive defensive thing because, like I said, an offensive lineman plays 100% of the snaps. Why can't a defensive lineman play 100% of the snaps? I don't understand it. Is it well, that's the way it's always been, so that's the way we're going to do it? Or we got to have fresh guys in there? Well, why doesn't the offensive line have fresh guys in there?
I think, like you said, I guess it has to do with schemes and packages. Like some
But that's what I'm saying. It's not a sort of a package thing because the packages kind of only account for a very small amount of plays that say for offensively, how many packages don't include Terry McLaurin?
Right.
One, a fourth and inches maybe, or maybe, something
an obvious run.
Runs, but that's a very small number.
But because defense, I think on defense you have more of your down guys. Like you have your first and second down guys. You have your strictly third down guys. then you have your fourth down and special teams guys. Like, I think that's more so happens on defense than does offense. Whereas, like you said, it could be a power I formation. You know, we're running it, but there's one wide receiver lined up to the right. It's Terry McLaurin. On first down, second down, third down, or fourth down. Does that make sense? Like, you might have like Micah Parsons they only bring him in on third downs to rush the quarterback, and that's all he plays is third down. But
so
as
okay,
opposed to
you're right.
Nick
Trev.
Gates is the center and he's playing every snap, but they're not going to bring in Ricky Stromberg to replace him because we're running a pistol formation. You know what I mean?
If
like
you bring in,
because it's third down.
If, for example, let's say the defense has let's say they have a pass rush specialist who only comes in on third downs. Why doesn't the offense
Ryan Kerrigan
have
Kerrigan, for example?
Why doesn't the offense have a pass rushing offensive tackle that comes in on obvious passing downs? Because they're giving away the play? I mean,
that's a good question. I don't think I have an answer.
To me, it just sort of feels like one of those, that's the way it's always been. I mean, we all played football, right? And in high school, if you were any good, you played 100% regardless of what position that you played, because you were the best, you were the better player, or they needed you, or the guy behind you was really bad, whatever. But it didn't matter what position you played 100% of the plays. If you were a defensive tackle, you played 100% of the plays. You didn't come out. I mean, you might come out for one play because maybe sheer exhaustion, but otherwise you played them all. And I've just never understood it. I just never understand. And sometimes you play both sides, but I get it that there are specialists, but why doesn't the offense have a specialist then?
So Brian had one answer to this, that the O-line and DBs are the most chemistry dependent units. They work together a lot more than other positions. So that's one of the reasons why you would see those two units playing the entirety of a game and all of their snaps compared to some of the other positions, is because those have chemistry involved. And that's why you have a starting corner on one side and a starting corner on the other. And then your nickel is a guy who can come in and out, right? They're not always there, but that chemistry between those back four is super important. And
I mean, that feels a little excusey. It feels a little,
Stoner doesn't like that answer. It wasn't the answer he was looking for, so he's just going to disregard it. Run a 10-second 40, okay, and move on.
Yeah. All right. I mean, it's an okay explanation, but it just kind of feels to me like
you're so dismissive sort of explanation. It's great.
That's the way that it's always been, and it's chemistry dependent. Is it really? I mean, it is to an extent, but if it's third and 12 and you're going to pass, does the left tackle really need to have good chemistry with the left guard if he knows that they're going to come back to pass? You want that, of course you do, but I'm just saying it sounds like it just sounds
and for that, if it's third and 12 defense, you're going to have more DBs than linemen probably. If it's third and 12, you're passing,
right? Because that's the way they've always done it.
No, I think it's a down thing. I think there are certain players that have certain roles on downs, like they're only a third down, second down. That's what I think it is for defense.
Right. I don't think it needs to be that way. Now, getting back to the spreadsheet.
All that, just for him to say, I don't think it should be that way.
Well, it's kind of coming back to the spreadsheet, right? And when
put that back up, Nathan. That was awful.
Yeah, when you look at those numbers right there on the usage percentage, and Nathan basically said it's not really that fair because of those factors, because offensive linemen are expected to have a higher usage percentage than a defensive lineman. I'm going to look at that. And if Washington had 10 offensive linemen on here, then they're going to have a higher usage percentage and therefore might look a little bit better as to how their draft turned out. Whereas another team has defensive tackles, wide receivers, and positions where people are constantly changing. And so their percentages are going to be lower because they're in those certain positions.
Well,
I'm
And
going
there's
to
a
look at this,
fixed-
and
yeah.
this is good enough for me to look at that and say, okay, how many snap percentage are each team in the last 4 years? How much are the guys that they drafted? How much are they playing? And I think it should be fairly cut and dry instead of kind of saying, well, other positions they play more snaps. Well, they shouldn't be. How's that? They shouldn't be.
So if you want to look at raw numbers, I have that available to you because that's right here. What I need to do with this and what I need is still something to develop. And so we're probably going to come back to this one a couple different times. And once we do, and I have shared it, at least this particular page that I have set up currently because I wanted to talk about it a little bit. And then hopefully it will update when I change things back. But the content here right now, yes, shows that Washington is not getting enough out of its top 100 picks that they've made. And they have made, according to this, 12 picks within the top 100 over the last 4 years. And the highest percentage used we have here is from Jahan Dotson. And the lowest is Ricky Stromberg, an offensive lineman who did end up getting injured, but also was not expected to be seen that first one. And so what I want to do with this is I do want to sit there and I want to take wide receiver stats and I want to sit there and say, okay, this is what's expected of a wide receiver, and then kind of give more information to what is here. But right now, just looking at the numbers, it's very easy to see that Washington's not getting value out of their top 100. No. And a lot of people, will say this, and this is not wrong. Ron Rivera was bad at drafting, right? And these picks just are not impact players. You can't really look at this roster and say this is where Ron Rivera had great success. Mm-hmm. People talk about San Francisco and their success in later rounds. What they don't talk about, like Stoner was trying to say, is their beginning picks are bad. They're like really bad. They're top 100 picks here. And you got to remember they did do the Trey Lance trade. So they only had 9 picks within the last 4 years within the top 100. Yeah. But they're not really good outside of Brandon Ayuk, who is a free agent to be. Well, I think he might have one more year, or if he's a free agent. No, he is a free agent.
Wait.
I can't remember. Yeah. So we're not going to get into that debate right now. But outside of Brandon Ayuk, they've not gotten value either from their top 100 picks. And then they waste a pick on a flipping kicker, which I told you ruined my stats because 40%. I got to deeper dive into there and be like, which actually kicks are special teams, because it's not fair. Because not every special team lineup is a special team lineup, right? But not every special team lineup is the kicker. Yeah.
Right. So Jake Moody should be 100%. Right.
Of because the kicks. He didn't miss time. Yeah.
Right. His percentage usage, I think, should be 100%. But you're right. I mean, that's stunning to look at San Francisco and the success that they've had with young players, like you said, and to look at their top 100 over the last 4 years and see Brandon Ayuk is basically the only success. Is really the only success on there. Even Aaron Banks is only playing 55% of those snaps. And that's stunning to me when you look at that. I mean, they made the bones in the later rounds, but
they did. And they also probably went crazy in free agency through those years too. So they
built a good team in San Francisco where these misses didn't hurt them, right? But so maybe
that's what
this isn't so much of an indictment on Adam Peters, and as Locked On Law mentioned, John Lynch probably had a little bit more. Grimjaw saying some people were trying to say that it was Adam Peters. Well, maybe this is why Adam Peters brings in a guy from Detroit, because when you look at Detroit and what they've done in the top 100, and they've had 17 picks within the last 4 drafts in the top 100, and look at all these hits. You got Aiden Hutchinson, you've got Peni Sewell, you've got Sam Laporta, you got Brian Branch, Jonah Jackson, Kirby Joseph is out there. all well in the green. And you can even maybe argue Jack Campbell was there as well. But I mean, look how much praise they got for Jahmyr Gibbs. And the guy only
50%.
played 50% of the snaps.
Mm-hmm.
He's not even out there, but they got a lot of praise for that pick after being lambasted for taking him at number 12, but it was the impact. And that's something this doesn't do. There's a correlation between snap counts and play, right? Especially over an extended period of time. But this one doesn't take into account the actual play of the person. And maybe, again, that's something I can develop and put together for it. But I do think that this is why you bring in the guy from Detroit, is how well that they were drafting within there. And I mean, even their misses aren't really that bad. Jameson Williams is still a great wide receiver. His miss is really because he had to miss significant time to, gambling inside buildings and stuff, right? So Hendon Hooker is a QB who is one of the few that zeroed out on this, and he zeroed out because he was injured and drafted this year. And they have Jared Goff. They didn't need a QB. They want to develop him and think that he could develop.
And Kirby Joseph on that list also is, I believe, who's the assistant that they brought in from Detroit, the assistant GM that they brought in.
I can't remember his name, which is why I just kept saying you bring in the guy from Detroit.
Right.
Thanks for calling me out on that. Now. Yeah.
I mean, I was just wondering if anybody knew, but Kirby Joseph is a guy that guy, the assistant GM, stood on the table for and said, you absolutely have to draft Kirby Joseph. And look what sort of player he got. And that's at the very, 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 that's basically, he was a fourth rounder. Is that right? Like right at the beginning of the fourth round?
He was a third round. These are all top 100. So these are all within the top. This is the top 3.
Third round is 96.
Then you have comp picks.
Well, I guess if you have the comp. So these are only third round. So he was at the very end. He was probably
very end of the third, probably. Yeah.
As the 98th pick. But man, that's really impressive to see what Detroit has done. So you take a guy from Detroit, the assistant GM, who's great at drafting top of the board guys, top 100 guys, and then you take an Adam Peters, who was great at drafting fourth round and back, and you put those two together, and maybe you turn into having quite the draft here in Washington. That's the hopes. That's what we're all kind of counting on here for the next few years.
Yeah, that is really the hope here. And this is one of the things that's been shaping up some of my decision making here. And one of the reasons why I had started this was the trade back talk. There's a significant number of people, HT being one, trade back. You take a QB project, and then you have all these QB coaches like HT's talking about. And there you go. That's as simple as that. Get more picks and you'll be able to, again, throw more darts at this dartboard. And I don't necessarily think you need to with the 5 in the top 100. I think you just need to hit, and kind of my decision making with this is, if you take offensive linemen, because people know we need to build up the offensive linemen, look at the usage percentage. Again, not necessarily quality, but kind of lends itself to believe that if you're in that amount of time, you at least have starter quality to you. Okay. Offensive line. You get to Trevor Lawrence at QB, and then you have Sauce Gardner at corner. Surtain at corner. Bryce Young was in here as well, but it goes all the way down to until Morig, who's a safety, something other than QB, or I don't know, kind of an all-pro corner that is playing significant snaps here. Even below that, offensive linemen seem to be kind of great value picks within the top 100, people who are going to start. Mr. Ricky Stromberg. And then that's where I want to see some of this picked for a center. And we need a center. Get a center in the top 100. You get the left guard in the top 100, maybe. And I think this is coming out here soon, Stoner. Correct me if I'm wrong. Take a young right tackle from another team
tomorrow,
like Onwenu. And there you go. You have your offensive line set. You might even be able to find a tackle, but those tend to be higher up. Those are first rounders that tend to be a little bit more successful. And I could actually sort this by that. So here's all the wide receivers, tight ends, tackles. So, I mean, look at the success rate of tackles here. There are 17 tackles here. And I mean, most of these, again, are taken on top, but they have high usage percentage. Now, a lot of them leaned out to the right, but there are several of these who are left tackles. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. There's misses, right? There's a bunch of these guys who are at the bottom here who missed. You know, having your tackle in for 37% or less is not a great thing. But there's more value, I think, than top 100 for the tackle.
Can I get
and
you
it's
to
great because
go ahead?
you
Trey.
could, like, I'm seeing some of these numbers beside these O-line, like pick 63rd, pick 72, pick, like, you can get your guy after the first 32 picks. Like, you don't have to sit there and think you can get him with number 2 pick or whatever pick. Like, tackles are a dime a dozen, in my opinion.
Kinda.
And it's
Yeah.
great.
I mean,
Kinda.
generally.
Elite
There's a lot of
ones, maybe
talent
not so much. Yeah.
in the top. There's a lot of talented O-linemen in the top 100. Because then if you start picking towards later rounds, you get your Brian Daniels. I know it's defense, but you get them. You get your Chris Paul. You get your ones who have a lot of, heart but not talent. But in the top 100, there's a plethora of O-line. They might not be talked about that much in the headlines as like Joe Alt or Evan, like Fashionanu or whatever, but they're still very, very good. They're just quiet killers and they pan out.
Let me ask you to do kind of along these same lines that Trevor was just talking about, but let me ask you to do a search or sort filter here and go back to the way you had it, to where you had your usage percentage, sort by usage percentage. So 100% is on top. And then where do you cut off the green? Where was your green cut off?
So the green is an automatic cutoff in this.
Oh, okay.
So the formula is going from this one is actually going to be 50, just because we have people who've played 100 snaps and we've had people who've played they've played 0% snaps.
Sure.
So 50 is your kind of zone here where it's white.
Oh, I see. So it's a gradual green as well. All right. So go up to about 75%, to where 75% is at the bottom. Okay. So right about there. And if you look at these numbers on the left-hand side, it's kind of Trev was talking about. Look at the numbers on the left-hand side when you start at 75% usage and up, and you see a lot of 77, 60, 68, 50, 33, 42, 56, 43. This is their pick. This is when they were taken in the draft. Paulson Adebo, the corner, for the New Orleans, was the 76th pick in his draft.
Yeah.
And he's playing almost 80% of the snaps. That's a win. 76th pick. That's third round, early
to
third
kind
round.
of better hit that home star. I think it's better to do it this way, where we sort by when they were taken over here. And so, like, getting Zach Wilson, not a win, because you can clearly tell from the picks around him not playing enough. Trey Lance is a good example. Anthony Richardson, still too early, injury. I didn't count for injury because those were still snaps that they missed.
Sure.
Okay. But then as you scroll down, you start to see far less green. And so now as you're kind of getting to this stage, we're still talking, this is a nice good green patch here that's still within the first round, that people outside of Tennessee with Caleb Farley were able to get decent or good to expected value out of that. And then you keep rolling down and these picks get, again, worse and worse and worse. And we're about to get to the range. This is usually the range where I start realizing the 44 pick and on, where it starts to become more of a crapshoot, more of something that is really difficult to get a guy who's really good. And you'll start to see less quality picks being made here after that. And so when I was looking at it and I was looking at top 100, I was really thinking top 100 guys are impact players, but that's not always the case. In fact, I had started this conversation earlier from Locked On Law. It's not just Washington fans, but he says Washington fans love every prospect because they're always going to say the franchise until they don't. Pardon me. I've seen the same narrative for the last 2 years. Every franchise does this. Every franchise has a fan base and a team that believes when they take these guys. When Indianapolis took Deo, I had to pick the worst name for me to ever use here.
Why don't you go to the guy below him? Sky Moore, easy.
Sky Moore. When Kansas City took Sky Moore at pick 54.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they didn't expect him to only play 35% of the snaps.
They
right?
expected a difference maker.
They thought he was going to be the next Tyreek Hill.
Sure did.
The fan base would, at least, and the team thought that this was a guy who was going to be fantastic. And he plays 35% of the snaps, but just a couple plays up from that, the Chargers got a guy whose name I'm not even going to attempt to say.
Go a little higher. Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, 73%. Jalen Hurts, Alec Pierce. These are good ones there. Thanks, Stoner, for saving me. As I literally first name that pops out is the worst name to pronounce for me. But yeah, Jalen Hurts, Alec Pierce, these guys are picking 53 and play 74, 78% of the snaps. And so it's just like every fan base thinks when that player's taken, that player is going to be good, especially within top 100. We do. But as you get lower and lower here, these numbers get abysmal. And you see so few hits. This range here actually from 78 to like 82, no good players, maybe Josh Downs out of Indianapolis.
I mean, there's a great one right down there at the bottom of where we can see right now is De'Ami Brown for Washington. We had huge expectations for De'Ami Brown with the 82nd pick in the 3rd round. We were all over that. And
we got Sam Howell.
Yeah.
He got his boy throwing to him from college. It's going to be great. Yeah.
Look at Nakobe Dean. That's 2 years in Philadelphia now, right?
Mm-hmm.
How amazing was Nakobe Dean at Georgia? Amazing.
We wanted
Stoner, but Trev was standing up on a table for this guy.
I was like, yo, go get Nakobe.
Go get Nakobe Dean.
I think you wanted him
less than first 10% snaps.
I did. I wanted him in the 1st round. So
I get it.
Jamin Davis, I think, right?
I mean, I get it. He was supposed to be quite the player, and in the end, he's just not. And it's crazy.
Then you look at like I'm saying with offensive lineman right there, number 90, Dylan Parham. Never heard of him, but he was very, very valuable for the Raiders.
Picked at 90 and plays 96% of the snaps.
And the Raiders did some things. So yeah, it's just when it comes to offensive linemen, I think the top 100 is golden for that.
I think this is good information for us to have because we talk about the top 100 picks. We have number 100. The best a number 1 pick or number 100 pick has done the last 4 years is played 41% of their team snaps. Elijah Molden from Tennessee. Do not fall in love with the guy taken at 100. I'm not saying that he's going to be bad. I'm just saying do not do what we always do and think that the guy taken was, he's got great value. That's what I told Stoner about Sam Howell. That's great value at the first round pick in the 5th round for a backup quarterback. I was like, this is going to be good. And he could develop into a guy. That was what I had told Stoner when they took Sam Howell. Do not fall in love with the prospects. Don't necessarily look at this and say, well, that means Washington, should take just offensive line. Or how about the fact that when I looked at the edge rushers, DE, we'll do DE and outside linebackers for this. Okay. When I looked at these numbers, I was just like, okay, never mind. Don't pick one of these guys. Just sign like 2 studs.
Go get some vets. Yeah. Go get some vets because the numbers here are not good, folks. The numbers here are telling me like, if you don't take one within the first like 5 picks, you might as well just not take one because some of these guys who I loved, there's some names in here. Number 32, I liked him for Tampa Bay. Tryon Shoyinka. He was good. He's nasty.
Yeah. I liked Felix last year. I thought Felix was going to be played 20% of the snaps. Like a lot of people love Nolan Smith. He's played 16% of the snaps, right? Like, I mean, just Mafe, 52% of the snaps. A guy who can be a beast, not even just barely playing half the snaps for his team.
And that does sort of play into what we talked about at the very beginning of this, which is edges don't necessarily play every snap. They take a whole series of downs off. We saw that every time that we would watch, we were studying Chase and Montez, trying to decide if we wanted to sign these guys long term, and we would see Hill and James Smith-Williams in there for a significant amount of snaps. So it doesn't necessarily, I think you're right, it doesn't necessarily equal, it's not equal, right? The number of snaps to their abilities or their impact on the game. But I mean, you can just look at it and you can say, yeah, you're right. You can look at Chase Young, who's at 48% of the snaps, and say, you're right. He didn't live up to what he was supposed to be at that pick because he's only playing half the snaps, whether it's for injury or just he's not that good, or he just, left his motor at home and didn't bring it to
you don't want your number 2 overall pick to not play. You want them to play.
That's right.
Chase Young didn't. Now, you can see here, for those watching the show, you can actually see over here that I'm trying to start an evaluation on the numbers to get a better idea of, are these, and you won't be able to really tell, is this a bust or not a bust, but are these players that Washington, or not just Washington, but the team got value out of? Because maybe, the scheme and or average wide receiver number in this case was like, I think it's actually not 65. I have it written down somewhere else. It was like 48% of the snaps. That's how many snaps the average wide receiver would take in the top 100. And so, like, did this wide receiver have more than that? Then it was a hit. Yeah. Okay. Did they have less than this? Then it was a miss. And so I'm still computing data and I'm still looking to it. So if this is something that interests you, we'll bring it back. If not, it's probably something I'm going to sit and toy with because I do find value to it. So it's just something I wanted to bring here for Ref the District, because one of the things I started on, the reason why I started this project was because of the trade back. Is there value in trading back? I personally don't think, when you have the number 2 overall pick, that it is.
Unless a
quarterback,
your team is set up for that. Yeah. Like if your team has a defensive side of the ball figured out, you got your weapons on the offensive side, you want to trade back and get a quarterback, you can afford to do that, you do that. But we're not in that position to mortgage our future that we desperately want for one person.
You know what? Based on what you just showed us with that spreadsheet, I'm not watching day 3. I'm not watching. I'm just going to consider all those guys are not going to be impact players in my I'm not even going to watch. I'm not going to watch Braden. Was it Braden Daniels?
Braden Daniels in the 4th round.
I'm not going to watch him. I can't even remember who I'm going to watch KJ Henry and Andre Jones Jr. and Chris. I don't care. Those guys are going to be afterthoughts to me. I'm not even going to watch them.
Amen. I'm with you. There you go.
Right. I'm going to put my foot down.
I personally, I keep day 3 up in the background, and it's just like, oh, look, we got a player. Let me look into them, because it's, what I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to tell you not to watch it, but I'm trying to explain, even that second half of day 2, don't necessarily fall in love with a guy taken there because that player historically might not work out. So do the research, look into it. It's not that they won't be a hit, because I will say this, they probably not a hit if it's a QB taken after the first, but that's just how the last 4 years worked out. Just how the data has shown in the last 4 years. But I want to try to get more information on this, and then we'll actually have, trade down scenarios where is there value there? There's, of course, like point values assigned to picks. And so we'll have all of that when it comes down to it. And we'll have more draft talk coming up. We'll have more combine talk coming up next Wednesday. We also have free agency on the horizon. Next week is the combine. You can sign your own players right now. Legal tampering starts on March 11th. So we've got all that information coming up for you. We've got more free agent player focuses coming around, and another one comes out tomorrow. We hope that you did enjoy this, and we'll try to bring you more great content as it goes along. We are live every Wednesday, live at 7:30 Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Nathan. That's the Stoner. That's Trev. We are brought to you by BetOnline and Don't Sleep Energy. And until next time,
I'm getting ready.
Getting ready for that Getting ready for what, Stoner?
I'm getting ready for the 40.
Be a
I'm
fan.
about the 40.